Do you live in a small apartment with maybe a balcony or patio as your only place to grow food? Or maybe you have a larger property, but it's either bad soil or covered in concrete. Or maybe you just want to increase the amount of in-ground space you have by doing something different. You can grow more food in all these situations by using containers, and I'm going to show you how coming up. I'm Brian with California Garden TV, and if you're looking to join a garden community that offers tips, tricks, and support to help you grow your own organic fruits and vegetables and become a little more self-sufficient along the way, then start now by clicking subscribe and hitting the bell so you get updated every time we upload videos, which right now is 3 times a week. Let's get growing. So this is our container garden area. And right now it is not looking the way we wanted it to look. The ground is supposed to be decomposed granite, but because of the stay-at-home order, we have not been able to get that delivered. But no worries, we're going to get started anyway and start planning up our containers. And I've got quite a few things to do, so I'm going to take you along with me. Now, I haven't had to buy any new containers this year. I'm using everything we already had, except for this rain gutter for the strawberries, and look how amazing these strawberries are doing already. They look awesome. That just goes to show you, you can use just about anything that will hold soil. Let me know in the comments what's the craziest or coolest thing you've ever planted in. Whatever you choose, you want to make sure that it will not leach plastic. If you're using plastic, you want to make sure it's not going to leach anything into the soil. And there are certain plastics that will, and there are certain plastics that won't. And I've discussed these in other videos. I'm going to leave a link down below that is going to go over the different types of plastics. All plastics are printed with a stamp that has, it's the recycle symbol with a number in it. And there's certain numbers that are safe, certain numbers that aren't. The website down below is going to let you know which ones are safe, so you can always choose the right plastics to grow in if you're going to grow in plastic. Now the basic rule is the bigger the plant, the bigger the pot. And size matters basically because of the root system. If you grow large plants like tomatoes or runner beans, they need a larger pot because they have a large root system that's going to be bringing in water and nutrients. So the minimum you would want for those are 5 gallons, which these buckets are 5 gallons. Now for medium-sized plants like peppers or bush beans or herbs, a 3-gallon pot like these would be sufficient. Small plants like carrots, radish, or lettuces, a 1 gallon would even work. Now that's just taking into account the size of the root run, but you need to keep in mind that the smaller the pot that you use, the more often you're going to have to water and fertilize. Now you're going to want to check the moisture daily. You can look at the top of the pot and it looks dry, but just under the surface it could be moist, so you don't want to overwater. So just stick your finger in 2 to 3 inches, and if you feel a good amount of moisture, they're fine. Let them be. If they're dry, then water them. Now as far as fertilizer is concerned, I've been using Neptune's Harvest fish and seaweed for years. It's a great balanced fertilizer that's perfect for containers and raised beds. So with that in mind, the most important thing about your pots isn't the pot itself, it's the soil in the pot. Now I use Kellogg's Organic Raised Bed Potting Mix. It's available nationwide, I believe, at Home Depot. Any organic potting mix will do. When it comes to raised beds and pots, the most expensive thing about them is the soil that you put in them. In my raised beds, which is filled with this, there's a lot of hardware involved there, but all the hardware was actually less expensive than the soil inside. Now you need to take into account the height of your bed as well. These are 15 inches tall, and you have to understand that most vegetables are the roots are only going to go down 12 inches at most. Some say 6 to 8 inches for the majority of the root run. So if your bed is 24 inches tall or 36, which by the way would be a really cool height because you could just stand up and do it, you're having a lot of space at the bottom that it's basically wasted space that you're filling with that very expensive compost. Now, if you're on a budget, and who isn't right now, you don't want to take up wasted space and fill it with expensive potting mix. So we want to find something that's either cheap or free to fill up some of that unused space. Now, if your container is 24 to 36 inches high or more, lucky you, but you can actually fill the bottom third with organic materials such as logs, sticks, branches, half-done compost, straw. You do not want to use something green like lawn clippings, because as they rot and break down, they produce a very, very bad sewer smell. And every time you water, all the water that drains out is going to have that smell for weeks or maybe months. Don't ask me how I know that. So all of those materials that I just mentioned are actually going to break down over time underneath the potting mix and create soil themselves. But if your bed is 24 inches tall or less, or your pots are 24 inches tall or less, you don't want to use that same material in the bottom. And the reason is, during that process of breaking down and composting, they're going to be taking nutrients and most notably nitrogen from the surrounding soil. Now, that's okay when it's really deep past the plant's roots, but when you're getting near the roots, it's going to be robbing nitrogen from your plants. That's nitrogen your plants would have used. And so what happens is you're going to get stunted growth, yellow leaves, and possibly dead plants. Again, don't ask me how I know that. So we need to fill in some of that space at the bottom of the shorter pots and raised beds with something that's not organic, that's not going to rob the nitrogen from the soil. And that's where your recycling comes in. Bottles like this that are food safe, which means they're stamped with a number 1 or possibly 5, but number 1 is actually the best. These can be used to fill in some of the space in your pot because they don't break down and they don't leach into the soil. So you can fill in the bottom portion of the containers as long as you leave 8 to 12 inches of space on top for the potting mix. Now, this simple hack can save you a ton of money when it comes to filling your containers with quality potting mix. So what can you grow in containers? Pretty much anything. Let me take you through what I'm going to be growing, and we'll even get some things planted together. So most of the things that I'm planting in my containers come from the 2 videos that I did recently, the 12 fastest growing vegetables and the top 10 survival staple crops. So let's start off right here with my potatoes. Now, I did this video about, I don't know, what, a month and a half ago, planting potatoes. And if you look here, I've got 3 containers. I've got a pot, I've got a bucket, and I've got a canvas grocery bag. And they're all doing really well. In fact, it's about time to earth them up. So we planted these deep so that the stems would grow tall and we could still fill in dirt. Now, just like tomatoes, the potatoes put roots out everywhere the stem touches the dirt, the soil. And more roots means more potatoes. So what we're going to do is just take some more potting mix and you're going to fill in all the way up to leave about 1 to 2 inches from the top of the pot. Now, you're going to be covering a lot of leaves, and that's totally fine. So for more information, you can go back and watch the potato video I did when I planted these. In fact, every video I mention, I'm going to link down below in the description. I planted this San Marzano tomato in a bucket on a previous video, which I'll link below. And the reason it's planted so deep is the same reason as the potatoes. As the stem grows, we're going to fill in all the way up to about 2 inches from the top. And everywhere that stem touches the soil, it's going to put down roots. So it's going to create a really strong, healthy plant with lots of roots to absorb moisture and nutrients. Now, in these 3 3-gallon pots, I'm going to be planting some of my peppers. Peppers are heat lovers, and they're actually little seedlings in the garage still right now because the nights are still in the 50s, and I don't want to put them out here when it's still too cold. It can stunt their growth. So we will be planting these on a future video of how to grow peppers from A to Z. Now, in 2 of these buckets, I'm going to be planting squash, 1 zucchini and 1 crookneck yellow squash. Now, I did have the seedlings coming along in the garage, But if you watched a previous video, they were attacked by caterpillars in the garage. Don't know how that happened, first time ever. So I'm gonna start all over again with seeds out here. It's warm enough to be planting them outdoors right now. This one is Caserta. Now I'm gonna plant 2 seeds in each one of the pots, one for insurance. Now these type of seeds are very flat. And so especially in wet climates, wet soil, you wanna stick the seed in vertically, not horizontal. The water can lay on top of that seed and rot it. So if it's like this, there's less surface area. So I'm gonna push it down in there about 1 inch, each one. Now always make sure you water thoroughly after planting seeds and label them. Now the third bucket, I'm gonna be planting cucumbers. And I'm gonna be planting Space Master cucumbers, and these are from the Cali Kim Small Space Kitchen Garden collection. I'll link that down below. They are a small space bush variety that's great for containers. And I'm gonna plant 2 of these in this bucket. Might be overkill, but one seems lonely. Now these 2 big pots right here, those are gonna be my sweet potatoes. And if you watched a month or so ago, Noah and I started this sweet potato. And as you see, there's no leaves just yet. I do see some eyes kind of swelling, so it should be pretty soon. If you look, we've got a good root system going on. But I don't see any leaves just yet. But as soon as those are out, we'll root them and I'll fill these pots up and we'll be good to go with our sweet potatoes. Now, one of my favorite things to grow last year was loofah. I think you know that by now. It was a fun plant, a really cool harvest. It was a beautiful plant, pest resistant. It was just great. And so I'm gonna be planting some in my raised beds. I'm gonna plant 2 in here. I've already got the TP installed. And if you wanna see how to do that, I did a video last week or the week before. I think it was my bedhead garden tour and doing this. So I'll link that below as well. Now these were survivors from the caterpillar attack, but they are strong plants and I think they're gonna be just fine. I'm gonna plant 2 in here. I'm gonna plant them right next to the pole so that when they start growing, they can grab on. Like I said, I'm gonna just plant 2 in this pot because they do get pretty big. Now another big climbing plant that needs a big pot are runner beans. And I'm gonna plant them in this pot right here. And the variety I'm planting is called Blauhilde. I think I pronounced that correctly. It's a purple bean. It's got really pretty purple flowers as well. I'm gonna plant 2 seeds at the base of each of the posts, about 1 inch deep. Now, one thing I never thought I would grow in containers is corn, but you can do it. But it needs to be a certain style of container. Now, right over here, I've got some purple Cali Kim Smart Pot mini raised beds. And the reason I like these for corn is that they are not too deep. Corn is pretty shallow rooted. In fact, some of its biggest roots are right on top of the ground for support. But also it's wide. The thing about corn is it's wind pollinated. And that means that the tassels at the top that have the pollen, they're blown by the wind and the pollen drifts across and hits the corn silks on each cob, and that's what pollinates the corn. But because it's wind pollinated, if you grow one line of corn and the wind is blowing this way, the pollen just blows over there onto the dirt, onto nothing. So you want to plant corn in groupings. And so that's why I like the width of these pots. Now when planting in raised beds or pots, you can plant more intensively. And so we can plant 2 corn plants per square foot. Now each of these pots is 3 square feet, so we can have 6 corn plants in each pot. And we're going to space them about 8 inches apart. We're going to plant 2 seeds per spot about 8 inches apart and push them down about 1 inch or 2. This variety is Stowell's Evergreen. It's a mid-1800s heirloom that stays in the milk stage for a long time. So if you have a habit of harvesting too late, like I do, this variety will still be good even if you wait too long to harvest it. Some more things I grow in pots are my lettuces. I have a new batch coming along here, and most of my herbs are in these galvanized metal wash bins. For perennial herbs like this peppermint here, the pot can very quickly become root bound, and you're going to need to water it once or twice a day in the summertime. You can already see this got watered yesterday and it's already floppy. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide this. So we're going to pull it out of the container, and I'm just going to break it in half. It's going to come apart in chunks, and you honestly can't kill this stuff. I'm going to break it into 4 pieces. Okay. I'm going to fill the pot back up with some good soil and pick the chunk that I want, probably this one here. And you just want to fill in around it to the level that this was already growing. Give it a good watering and it will perk right back up, and in no time we'll have this pot filled again. And you've got 3 other plants that you can plant somewhere else or give away. Do not plant mint in the ground, it will take over. So I hope all this gives you some ideas and some inspiration if you wanted to expand how you grow food, or you live in a small apartment, maybe you don't have much space and thought it was absolutely impossible. It is possible. You can grow any vegetable in containers following these instructions. Now, if you're watching and you don't even have a small balcony or patio, or you live in a climate that has a very short growing season, you still can grow vegetables. In fact, we can grow pretty much year round here, so I've never really tried growing anything indoors under a grow light. But this coming Tomato Tuesday, we're going to be starting to grow a tomato plant indoors under a grow light. I've had a lot of requests for that, and so I'm actually interested myself, because how cool would it be in the middle of January to just be able to go into a back bedroom or your garage and pick some fresh homegrown tomatoes in the middle of winter. I think that'd be pretty cool. Now for you guys in the Southern Hemisphere, this is perfect timing because your winter is coming in just 2 months. As always, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video or learned something, please consider subscribing and give the video a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it, and I will see you guys on Tuesday.